The prosecution in the George Zimmerman trial is expected to call its final witnesses when the court reopens tomorrow. This after another dramatic day of testimony on Wednesday. NBC's Kerry Sanders is in Sanford, Florida, following it all. Kerry, good morning.
Well, good morning, Kate. Yes, the court is closed today, but on this 4th of July, the jury is still sequestered. The court says that they have special activities planned for them, but what they're doing remains a secret. It's a short break from the massive amount of testimony they've already heard from 35 witnesses.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm?
Former Professor Alexis Carter testified George Zimmerman was an A student in his college criminal litigation class.
He was probably one of the better students in the class.
It's been 3 years since Carter taught Zimmerman, yet the professor clearly remembers his student, as defense attorney Don West demonstrated to the jury.
You see George over here?
How you doing, George?
Carter testified the stand your ground law was a topic in his class.
I remember, talking about it, quite a few times, not just on one particular occasion.
Yet in a Fox News interview played for the jury Tuesday, Zimmerman said this.
And I was just curious, prior to this night, this incident, had you even heard Stand Your Ground?
No, sir.
You'd never heard about it before?
No.
Stand Your Ground is a Florida law that allows people fearing for their lives to use deadly force without having to retreat.
He was hitting my head against it. It felt like my head was going to explode.
Zimmerman, who's pled not guilty, says Trayvon Martin attacked him, and he shot and killed the unarmed 17-year-old in self-defense.
You don't have to wait until you're almost dead before you can defend yourself.
No, I would advise you probably don't do that. Yeah.
A rare moment of levity in the second-degree murder trial. On Wednesday, the jury was again shown the pistol Zimmerman used that night, the sweatshirts Martin was wearing, and the bullet hole made by the deadly shot to his lung and heart. The state presented testimony from a DNA analyst.
State Exhibit 186.
Who said only Zimmerman's fingerprints were found on the gun's grip.
Yes, Trayvon Martin was excluded as being a possible contributor.
And that none of Zimmerman's DNA was found underneath Martin's fingernails, despite Zimmerman saying the teenager repeatedly slammed his head into the concrete.
And Professor, can you still hear us okay?
Yes.
And a technical challenge in court Wednesday sparked more levity when a witness had to testify via Skype with a Skype address visible to people watching on TV. Some couldn't resist calling in.
Is there another phone that we can call into?
Skype. Well, prosecutors are expected to call their last witnesses tomorrow. It could include Trayvon's mother. Kate?
Kerry Sanders in Florida. Thank you. Lisa Bloom is a Today legal analyst. Lisa, good morning. Happy 4th to you.
Good morning to you as well.
So you just heard Kerry report that Zimmerman's former professor was on the stand yesterday talking about teaching Stand Your Ground in his classroom. What does that tell us? Because Zimmerman in an interview last year said he had never heard of that law before. Is the prosecution simply trying to show once again that he's inconsistent?
Two big problems with that for George Zimmerman. Number one, it appears to be an out-and-out lie. He's caught on that videotape with a friendly interviewer saying, I've never heard of it. And his professor says he was one of my best students, and we talked about it all the time. And secondly, this is something the prosecution can argue in closing argument. You know what? He was educated enough in the law of self-defense to concoct a story right at the time of this shooting and give it to the police and stick to that story that it was self-defense because he knew that could exonerate him.
So they're trying to prove perhaps that Zimmerman knew enough about the law to make an excuse and use it in his own defense.
Exactly. That he could say, I was in fear for my life. He was reaching for the gun. I mean, these are the magic words in self-defense law, and George Zimmerman seemed to know them.
We had forensic evidence presented in court yesterday, DNA evidence. You heard Kerry reference it. The prosecution seemed to be trying to show that there was no DNA found underneath Trayvon Martin's fingernails or on his hands. Why is that so important, and do you think they made a convincing case on the DNA?
Well, it's certainly curious because George Zimmerman says that Trayvon Martin punched him in the face, and we see the pictures of all the blood coming off of his face. If that's so, and Trayvon Martin then tried to suffocate him, putting Trayvon Martin's hands over his face, why is there no blood on Martin's hands, under his fingernails, or on the cuffs of the two shirts that he was wearing? The problem for the prosecution is that the DNA expert had to admit on cross-examination there were some real problems in the collection of the evidence. For example, the hoodie that Trayvon Martin was wearing got very wet from the rain. It was then bagged in plastic, leading to the decomposition of biological evidence.
Lisa Bloom, thanks as always. We'll be back at it again tomorrow.